Hey, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to all my cloud scholars out there. I want to thank you for clicking on this video and continuing with this series. In this video, we are going to be talking about managing access to your Log Analytics Workspace. So here are the things that we're going to cover in today's video. We're going to go over access modes, which is a method used to access the workspace, defines the scope of the data available, and the access control mode that's applied. Then there's access control mode, where settings on the workspace that define whether permissions are applied at the workspace or resource level. When we're talking about resource level, we're talking about the tables. And then RBAC, Azure role-based access control, permissions applied to individual or groups of users for the workspace or resource, sending data to the workspace, defines what data you have access to. And then there's table level Azure RBAC, which is optional permissions that define specific table types in the workspace that you can access and can be applied to all access modes or access control modes. All right, to start us off, let's go into the access mode. I actually pulled up the Log Analytics Workspace documentation on the Microsoft documents, and this is exactly what it talks about, right? So it says there's two modes. Workspace context, you can view all logs in the workspace for which you have permission. Queries in this mode are scoped to all data in tables. So remember, Azure Log Analytics Workspace is a bunch of tables. So if you have a Log Analytics Workspace with 10 tables, then this individual will be able to query against all those tables. Then there's resource context. When you access the workspace for a particular resource group or subscription, such as when you select logs from a resource menu in Azure Portal, you can view logs for only resources in all tables that you have access to. Queries in this mode are scoped to only data associated with that resource. So if you have 10 tables in your Log Analytics Workspace and you do a resource context mode, essentially what you're doing is, all right, well, table 3 and table 5 you have access to, they wouldn't be able to see anything outside of that scope. So that's what the resource context mode is referring to. So scrolling down a little bit more, they talk a little bit about comparing modes and talks about, issues, and then also, when you would want to use it. Who is each mode intended for? So workspace context is central administration, administrators who need to configure data collection, and users who need access to a wide variety of resources. And then resource context mode would be more for application teams. So you have a DevOps team, application team, and they need to monitor certain things, and you have a Log Analytics Workspace that you have team A and team B getting resources from. Then you would want to make sure that team A only has access to those resources and team B has access to its resources as well. So then we have, what does a user require to view logs? Okay, so let's look at this document we have on the screen. So right here we have a Log Analytics Workspace, and we have a bunch of tables, table 1, 2, and 3. With this Log Analytics Workspace, we have it in resource context mode. So law is Log Analytics Workspace. I'm gonna keep calling it law throughout the remainder of this series, and I don't want to keep typing out Log Analytics Workspace. But anyway, we have it in resource context mode, and as you can see there, table 1 has access to team A has access to table 1. Team B has access to table 2, and in table 3, team C has access to it. So excuse me, table 1, table 2, table 3, got it right now. And you have the different teams that have access to it. So that's essentially what they mean by resource context mode. So over here, we keep going down. It says, what does a user require to view logs? Permissions to the workspace. And then here, we're going to get into more permissions later on in the video. And then read access to resources as well. So if you go through this documentation, you can see a lot of different things when it comes to Log Analytics Workspace, and it talks about it. The next thing I want to cover here is the access control mode. So the access control mode is set in on each workspace that defines how permissions are determined for the workspace. So there's also require workspace permission. This controls mode doesn't allow granular Azure RBAC to access this workspace. The user must be granted permissions to the workspace or to specific tables. Then there's use resource or workspace permissions. This control allows granular Azure RBAC. Users can be granted access to only data associated with resource they can view by assigning Azure read permissions. Okay, so this is a little bit confusing versus the other thing I said, because it's basically saying the same thing, and for some reason Microsoft wants to call it require workspace permissions and resource context mode and other stuff. So use resource or workspace permissions is essentially resource context mode to a certain degree. See, it says workspace context mode up here, and that is exactly what this is, right? And then down here, it says use resource or workspace permissions. It says when a user accesses the workspace in resource context mode. So Microsoft could have just called it the same thing. Is a bit confusing, but that's exactly what it means. So let me show you in the Azure portal how that looks. So back over in the Azure portal, I'm going to go back to our demo law that we created in the previous videos. And I'm just going to come over here to settings, and I'm looking for properties. So if you go into properties, as you can see here, it says use resource or workspace permissions. And that is exactly what they were referring to. And if all you have to do is you click on this, and then now it's require workspace permissions. So you see right here, it changed. So that's as simple as it is for you to change the tables on how you want to access the tables within your Log Analytics Workspace. And if you come to tables, here you can see all your different tables within your Log Analytics Workspace. And if you remember in earlier videos, I said total retention 30 days is normal, the normal retention period for your Log Analytics Workspace. So coming over here, as you can see in the Microsoft documentation, it says configure access control mode for your workspace. And it gives you the overview, because in the overview, you can see what mode it's in. I actually didn't show you that earlier. But then it says change this setting on properties page of the workspace. You don't have permission to configure it. Change the setting is disabled. And then you just click on it like what we did earlier in the video, right? Over here, you have a PowerShell command that you can use to do this as well. And then over here, there is some resource manager information that they give you as well. And right here, it says to access workspaces managed by using Azure RBAC to grant access to Log Analytics Workspace by using Azure permissions. So what it's talking about is up here where you have the IAM permissions, where you could go in and then you can now change the permissions here. And we'll go into that a little bit more in another video. And then down over here, if you go into your tables, you have the ability to manage permissions at your table level as well. So if I was to come over here and I would say access control IAM, I would be able to modify the access over here as well. So back over the Azure documentation, it says right here for built-in roles, it says you can assign users to these roles to give them access at different scopes. So that could be at a subscription level, resource group level, and the resource access to only specific workspaces, as we went through a little bit earlier. The Log Analytics Reader, members of the Log Analytics Reader role can view all monitoring data and monitoring settings, including the configuration of Azure Diagnostic on all Azure resources. So you want to really be careful with what you're giving to your individuals. You want to make sure that you're staying compliant with what you're doing with your Log Analytics Workspace, because those logs, depending on what applications are going there or services are going there, they may give off some information such as, usernames, emails, and so on and so forth, public IP addresses or even IP addresses altogether that you don't want everyone to have access to. Then you have the Log Analytics Contributor role, right? Members of the Log Analytics Contributor role can read all monitoring data granted by the Logs Reader, but it can do way more than the reader. So they can edit monitoring settings for Azure resources. They can create and configure automation accounts. They can add and remove management solutions, so on and so forth. And then also run search jobs, which we're going to talk a little bit more about that in subsequent videos. All right, so that wraps up this video. We got into a little bit about, access mode, access control mode, which is very similar, Azure RBAC, role-based access control, and then we talked a little bit about the table level Azure RBAC as well. So I want to put a pin in this video and continue moving on. We're going to do a little bit more stuff when it comes to RBAC and things of that nature. I'll go a little bit more deep dive. Just wanted to kind of do like a quick overview with you for this video. And we are going to wrap this one up. So once again, my name is Kieran Tross. I want to thank you for watching this video. Please, if you haven't done this already, please smash that like and subscribe button. And I'd like to hear from you in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking about this series. And also if there's anything that you want me to go into further detail. I do have people a lot of times send me messages about videos, and sometimes I make videos about what you ask. It helps me with video ideas as well. So thank you again for watching this video. Here at Cloud Scholars, my goal is to get you from scholar to consultant, and of course, consultant to expert. Thank you, and see you next time.